everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dreamr Podcast, where we aim to provide you big value in the pursuit of your dreams. I am your host, Chris Adams, and I'm very excited about our guest today. David, also known as DRock, was an aspiring filmmaker turned storyteller in the business of creating stories around people and brands. Most notably, DRock has worked for Gary Vaynerchuk for the past 7 years as his executive creative director and is a full-time videographer, editor, and producer. DRock, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I mean, it really means a lot. I normally say no to most interviews, but I had a good feeling about this one, so I'm excited. And I can already tell with the Nipsey Hussle something in the back, Logic. Yeah, I got a little Mac Miller in the back there too. I'm super into this.
Hey, well versed on his hip hop. This is going to be great, man. I'm excited. So listen, DRock, I've low key known who you are for the past, I would say at least couple years, as Gary Vee has gone on his rise on Instagram, YouTube, etc. Because he's not shy about shouting you out about DRock, getting the shot and getting the edits out and all that.
Or not to edit.
or yeah, not to
or not to like anything, or just the nature of Gary, and I love him for that.
And so, a lot of people come to me for advice when they talk about, hey, I want to get started on this and this. And one of the most common pieces of advice I can give to someone, especially if they're young, is to get around somebody who already has momentum on their dream, to kind of just get that feeling of like what that energy is like, how that person operates. And obviously being the cameraman, the creative director, you've gotten to kind of set the stage for him do his thing and also capture those raw moments. Do you think that's good advice? Am I giving people, the right direction there? What have you learned from Gary Vee? Just talk to us about your experience working with him, the past 7 years.
Yeah, I would say that I think you're giving incredible advice. I think the value of working for somebody is that you spend time with them. And, to me, I was blessed, lucky, serendipity. I don't know how you want to word it, but there was a moment in time where I offered Gary a free video, and he said yes. And I made the free video and thought nothing else of it. I'm going to use it to get more clients. And Gary said, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" I was like, "Sure, why not? Let's figure it out." And at first I was like, "Okay, this guy, he's a businessman. It's not what I want to do. I want to be Spielberg. I want to direct movies. I want to tell those stories, write books, create the next Harry Potter." But then, a year or two into working with Gary, it was nice to have a stable job.
Yeah.
He was very fast, very creative, very on his toes, very smart, very witty. And then I just started getting bored. We did the Ask Gary Vee show for about a year once I started, and was like, I don't know if I want to just produce this kind of show. So I started getting bored, and I was like, you know what? Let me try to make another short film for him, and let me just follow him around a little bit with my camera. And that's when I kind of realized, wait a minute, this guy's life is interesting. Like not per se like him coming and sitting down and answering questions off Twitter, but like who he interacted with, how he moved, how he navigated. I became instantly like curious. And I think, as someone who gives advice for other people pursuing their dreams, curiosity is the number one trait that I can encourage anybody to have. If you're curious, if you're hungry and you want to learn about something, I think the best way is to try to get as close to the sun as possible, as Gary would say. And so yeah, eventually I was like, hey, we got a vlog, and I remember a little resistance. He was like, I don't know if I want a man following me around all day. And then Casey Neistat started vlogging a lot. And he started doing the everyday vlogs, and it was taking off. People were like, I think he did it for a solid year before I finally convinced Gary to let me follow him around. And we started, the concept worked, and we were like, we're gonna do this for the rest of our lives. As I started getting closer to Gary, I realized he also believed in intellectual property, which is known IP, characters,
Mm-hmm.
cartoons, stories like that. And I've always wanted to do that too. He used to say, I want to like relaunch old brands and create nostalgia and revamp the IP. And I always wanted to do like original, cartoon
Mm.
characters.
Yeah.
And it's funny because now, we're sitting here on June 1st, and we had just went through this massive, massive project where Gary launched Vee Friends, which
Yeah.
is a
Let's
huge
talk about that.
a huge NFT project, where he made 250 something cartoon characters out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're in this like transition period of like, wait a minute, we are going to be building the next Walt Disney. And so, yeah, if I can be that guy and be a part of that process, ultimately, I want to do my own.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately down the road, but I love learning. I'm very curious to see where he can go with it. His approach, you know, um, sitting. We flew out to Malibu on a whim, like, and within a week notice, he's like, "Hey, let's all go to Malibu. I'm gonna just sit there and draw." And now I had seen Gary Doodle, but I have not seen this man draw. And to say the least, I'm very impressed. And I believe that Gary, in the volume, in how he thinks about creative with volume, he doesn't let himself decide what is the best. He lets the market decide because the market is the end goal. And
Mm-hmm.
so, at first I was like, are you? Well, he was also talking about drawing 10,000. So I think that's where I was a little like, you're gonna sit down and draw 10,000 in a week. I was doing the math. It was something like he had to do a drawing a minute for like 10
Yeah.
days. So I was like, I think
You
that's
can
where I
make
was a little,
multiple, yeah, in the
yeah, I
NFT
was a
because
little bit
yeah.
more, I was a little bit more hesitant. I was like, Gary, a little bit less. So then he ended up drawing 254, which is a lot of drawing all the time. And there's a few characters that are gonna rise and become the next Mickey Mouse or Despicable Me or any of those things. So I
Mhm.
think it'll be a fun process for me to be a part of over the next decade.
Yeah, yeah, that's super awesome. So let's talk about NFTs for a second.
Okay.
Um, Obviously, the success of V Friends is something super notable to the entire NFT space. And just myself as I don't watch a ton of content, but I always found value in Gary's content. So it's unique for me to say like I actually have watched quite a bit of Gary V content over the last couple of years, and one
Thank
of
you.
the things, yeah, I know that's you, bro. I watched your
There's
work.
me and 30 people. We have a whole team, Gary Vee. I never want to take credit for anything that
For
I
sure,
don't do.
for sure,
There's a
for
whole
sure.
team now producing tons of content. I think we do about 200 pieces a day. So it's a lot. But
Yeah,
yeah.
that's insane. That's insane. But I'm certain that I was watching it when it was probably just DRock and one other person sitting there editing videos.
Let's go.
Uh,
Either Babin or Stefan Lawrence. Huge shit out here.
Babin sounds familiar. Babin
Yeah,
sounds familiar.
I love
So,
that.
the concept of IP, I really love that in the intersection of NFTs. So I love these characters. I really love even more so that he's tied these NFTs to access to an event. That's a lot of ideas we're playing around with in our camp. So, to watch Gary Vee execute that was super cool. But we've got a whole Dream Machine tour, that we launched during COVID that's
I
really
do.
going out. We've been adding, if that's our charity arm, of our 501c3, where we look to just really add value in communities. And that's like a physical layer that we have with our digital platform, right? And
Love
we're
it.
just looking to create more and more of those. And so NFTs is interesting because as we have physical events, as we have start to have annual things with that tour, I really like the idea of taking our IP, which we have a character in the app, which could be a Mickey Mouse, like that kind of thing. It's called Sun and Moon. It's an alien.
I want to see it.
Um,
I can't wait. Um,
I'll
I get
send you some
so
Sun and
excited
Moon
about
love,
this
but
stuff.
but so yeah, so we are currently like we've got some plans to do NFTs that also tie access to a physical event. So
Love it.
I love to see him do that, and I especially know just I'm sure with the way Gary Vee's thinking about it that he's really trying to provide a blueprint for people people of like how to create value in this space. And that's something that I admire a lot about Gary, and something that I've even tried to emulate. Like I've literally learned from his content, you know, like from kids on the internet, you could go watch the DailyVees and get like a college course in like how to be an entrepreneur better than the university.
And I truly believe that too, because like
It's facts.
the thing that people don't realize is we didn't manufacture stories. Like this was literally the man's life.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, in the storytelling fashion, we had to make it interesting. So there was some more like hype episodes. But if you actually just go watch the videos, you can learn so much knowledge. And everyone, I would get DMs all the time. Yeah, but what's the secret? What's the thing behind this thing that he's actually doing? And I'm like, this is what he's doing. Like there's not like we're not hiding anything out there.
The secret is that he gets up in the morning and he really wants to do it. Like that.
And it's funny. My favorite thing, and I hope to meet you one day, like in real life, because this whole world is reopening and everything, and I just like people. But my favorite thing to do is show off his calendar because every single minute is programmed. Every single minute. And so when he wakes up at 8 a.m. and when he goes to bed at 10, every single minute is scheduled in his calendar with something to do. Now it's funny. I've used to do try to emulate that a lot for myself as a creative. I was like, yo, I need to be booked, I need to be moving stuff along. But what ended up happening was I would overbook myself and nothing creative would happen. So you got to find your balance. I think Gary has the infrastructure in place. He has the people in place to help him move along on the other projects that he can't per se do. So yeah, I think it's very important. But yeah, so Gary's had yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your thought. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna no. If you want to talk
No,
about
I have a question on the calendar.
Yeah.
The calendar. I'm curious, just if you had a rough number. Obviously, I know there's no formula, but if you could guess how much of that time was scheduled for meetings where he's just directly communicating to team members.
It's 95%.
95%. That's what I figured.
Yeah, it's like there's kids and family stuff in there too, but it's crazy now with Zoom. It's crazy now because he just goes
yeah, right into your next meeting.
And there's like no minutes. You know, it's crazy. I've been in his apartment now for a few days over the course of this quarantine, and the guy maybe got up once for the bathroom.
Yeah.
Well, like literally talking his face off. And every meeting, he's in the center of attention, meaning like everyone needs him there. That's why he's there.
Yeah.
And so running a 1,000-person agency from your apartment is kind of wild, but he also did that while we were in the office. Like there would be lines out of his office door just to get in between meetings. Just to get something, you know? So he was always that kind of guy. I just think COVID made everything a little bit more streamlined and cut out a lot of the crap, you know?
Sometimes that's the advantage. That's the advantage we definitely found in COVID. Our whole team is distributed. So it just caused us to really double down on communication and making sure everybody was okay. And we've been able to thrive during it, thankfully.
Yeah.
So,
I want to go back to the NFT thing because I feel like I want to talk about that. It was funny because when we were coming up with it, we were like, oh, this is cool, like access. That makes sense. Gary's world is access. He loves people. He loves to like have dinners. He likes to have brunches. He likes to play tennis. He likes to go fishing. So we're like, cool, let's build this world around Gary's world, which makes a lot of sense. But what I was gonna say was up until the point of Gary's launch of VeeFriends, everyone was buying NFTs as art. It was just a collectible sitting in their wallet. And then people started pushing back like, hey, like what's the value of these NFTs? And like when people didn't it was hard for people to understand that like we were actually giving them a value. Like the access was more of and people were like, well, they're so expensive. But like so are a lot of the other NFTs that are out in the space and they were just art. I think that's the value that Gary does provide is like he's always thinking about the audience first, and he's like, I don't want to seem like a douchebag artist. I want to provide value to my audience. And what more value can I give other than my time, you know? And I think
Right.
that's what you wanted to
Right.
make sure everyone understood. So
Yeah. And I think that's the magic of his story. Like, so much of it is about, how do I provide value to this other person? I know, just from trying that out myself, that's 100% my framework. You know, any deal I go into, how do I create win-win situations, and how do I give the most on the other side? Not about this deal. You know, I'm aware I'm leaving money on the table sometimes, and the deal I'm talking about, but
mhm.
what it creates is that person wants to do business with me again, because of how easy it was, how I always make sure they're taken care of, and that's something that I've really kind of built my career off of, and that's some Gary Vee knowledge, man.
That's smart.
So,
Smart. Listen,
um,
if you can give 51% of the relationship every time, the world has a
oh,
funny way of working.
hmm
It's
hmm
honestly,
so, so DRock, let's talk about what's next. You know, you've been Gary Vee creative director 7 years. Obviously, you know, if I was Gary Vee and I had you on my squad, there's no way I'm letting you leave. So, what's the next thing? What is the project you have on deck that you're most excited about?
yeah, I mean, listen, COVID was a funny year, right? Like we were nonstop travel, work, travel, run around, work, travel,
I
not
bet,
sleep,
yeah.
working all the time, right before COVID. And then as soon as March 16th hit, we were like, what? And so like I kind of went through like a whole little like, what is going on in my life? What do I do? How do I figure this out? Like my job is to follow someone around with a camera. I'm not gonna see that homie for 2 weeks, you know? Like
Hmm.
so you're like, what are we doing here? And then last year Michael Rubin reached out to us at VaynerMedia, and we were part of the All In Challenge, which was so remarkable to be a part of because you know they needed to make it happen fast, and they needed to make it happen as soon as possible. So they hired Team Gary and VaynerMedia to help run that, and it was a remarkable experience. We raised $55 million to help feed people in need, and we just had to
Wow.
crank out a ton of content, and we did that for about 2.5 months with no weekends, nothing. I was like working from like
Wow.
beginning of April to probably the end of June, middle of June was like literally every single day.
So those that aren't familiar, that may not be familiar with this, can you just tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about what the All In Challenge was? I mean, 55 million, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, listen, y'all and Sean is probably one of the most proudest things I've ever worked on in my life. Like in terms of just like macro good for the country. Um, All in Sean was a program that Michael Rubin and Fanatic set out to start, which was helping give money, raise money to feed the people that were going through these hard times of
Mm.
COVID. And so we used a lot of celebrity star power to help get endorsements from people. So like even one of the stories was Kevin Hart was giving away a role in his movie if you donated money to the cause, and then they would raffle somebody off and you can go be in the movie. And so it was
That's
a
tight.
lot of really cool experiences like that. um and it was super cool to be a part of. We got a ton of awareness, ton of TV, ton of social, and ended up being really good for the world. And that was really
That's
fun.
awesome. And 55 million towards hunger.
55 million.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was insane. It was just like
That probably fed so many people, man. Like,
yeah, man.
that's a lot of meals.
It was a
That's
lot of meals.
amazing.
And it's funny, it was kind of a light bulb in my head of like, you don't have to wait to do good. You can just start doing good now. And I
Yeah.
think, the pandemic, um, getting closer to people that I care about, having, the whole Black Lives Matter thing, the Asian hate thing going on, and all the negativity in the world these days. I tend to be optimistic, we can find the light kind of guy.
Yeah. Me
So
too.
I am constantly trying to figure out where I want to play in the world with like what causes I want to give back to. So if anybody listening to this has ideas, shoot me an email or a DM. I'm always I love helping people, you know, even on the micro level. So
Yeah, me too, man. That's something that if anybody out there listening isn't doing that, I think there's a really valuable lesson here in being able to start where you are with what you have. But being kind to people and helping people and just having that really be like a part of your daily life is something that is completely perspective changing, and can change the way you experience life on the day to day if you start to integrate that. That's just speaking from personal experience on that one. I'm a big
yeah,
believer in that.
I mean 1,000%. And so, you know, even I don't know, I know they're way off topic and I can come back, but
Yeah.
you know, just talking about perspective, Gary's on the board of Pencils of Promise, which is a
Hmm.
foundation that helps build schools in Africa. I think in 2017 we went. I don't remember what. Yeah, I think 2017 we went to Africa and we went to go see like the schools being built. We
Hmm.
helped a little bit. And it was funny. They were telling us stories of these women that had to walk 6 miles to get water and carry gallons of water back on their head. And when they got back to the town, it would be dirty and it would be full of bugs and full of like just
Oh,
infections and
yeah.
stuff. But that's all they had. And so as soon as I got back to America, I just remember turning on my tap water and like looking at this and being like, I will never complain about anything basic ever again
Yeah.
because it is crazy how much we take for granted in this world. And yeah, that's just something I wanted to get off my chest a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's so true, man, especially in America. And I think like
Oat
people
milk, almond milk, latte, like all these milks. It's like, guys, aren't you just grateful that you can have water?
6 miles to water. You
Yeah.
know, I gotta walk 6 feet. I could get water right now. And you know, like that's
If you
just,
can
yeah.
really understand that, like if you can really understand that, it's something that will change your life. And I love that about like
Yeah.
moments, you know?
Yeah, that's like you know, that perspective, you don't have to go to Africa to get it, but it's really being willing to go outside your own bubble, see how other people live, and then use that to really develop a sense of gratitude and appreciation for the things you do have. I
Like,
think I think if everyone spent time doing that 5 minutes a day, like the world would be better off. Because it's just we all just have a tendency, there's a human tendency to just be so absorbed in our own stuff and our own problems, that we forget to have that perspective. So I'm so glad you touched on that because this podcast is really about mindset. You know, it's and that's what I think. Even just hearing you talk, a lot of everything you're saying is mindset because I think you know that's how to approach pretty much everything. It's like step one, get your mind right.
yeah,
So
and by the way, like let's just talk a little bit about mental health and stuff. It's hard. Like everyone goes through
hmm.
ups and downs. Like it's not
Hmm.
like I'm on this podcast and I have it all figured out, you know? Like last Friday I was having a bad day, you know?
Yeah,
So like mentality is something that you gotta work on just like working out in the gym. Like you
it's
can't
daily.
expect to have it all the time. It hit heavy sometimes and you gotta just work through it. Sometimes what I do is, you know, I like biking or running or working out, and that tends to be the way I relieve a lot of like the stress in my head. But a lot of times it is talking it out to other people too. So like there's just ways to go about it, and there's more resources than ever today. And so I would encourage people to try to look on the bright side and try to find someone or something that makes you feel safe. And when you're going into these dark places, try to go into that and
Yeah,
get your
yes.
get your mind right.
That's huge, man. I don't think people talk about that enough. It's something my partner, Charlie Rocket, talks about a lot. That even though we might be on this podcast talking about positivity and the mindset to approach your goals, that doesn't mean that I wasn't super depressed last Friday and like crying to my wife about some stresses and pressures I'm dealing with. And that's a true story. So uh, but it's these practices, it's these things that we're talking about that will allow you to get out of that and stay stuck in it. You know, because it's like cool if I can express where I'm at. That allows me to really like look at it and be like, you know what? you 6 feet and you can get clean water, you know. Your problems are not that big, and there are situations you put yourself in, and like, you know what to do. It's just talking yourself out of it, and a big part of that's admitting where you are. And you know, don't fall into that trap of, and this is for the audience, you know, don't fall into that trap of always wanting to appear positive that you're not willing to admit, you know, when you don't have it. Because, you know, like my man DRock just said, even the people that you think do really have it together, they have their ups and downs too. It's part of the human experience. You know, we're all playing that game. So
that's a really good. That's a really good point.
So I know we got off topic,
Yeah.
but let's talk about what is next for because we're big on dreams here. You know, I know what you've done. I know, you know, high level where you want to go, you know, but what's your big dream project you're working on right now? I feel like you're probably at the point in the career where you could really decide what you want to focus on, right? So what's next?
It's so funny. The timing of this podcast couldn't have been more accurate. I mean, tonight is June 1st. I have a meeting with Gary about my career.
Awesome.
Literally an hour after this podcast. So, who knows? But currently, we have a media property, 137, very much like our Complex, our Vice, and you know, through that, we're gonna try to start launching a lot of original programming. My buddy Tyler and Lou have a podcast called Card Talk, sponsored by eBay. That's on 1:37 p.m. And so we're gonna try to just start launching a bunch more shows. We're calling them pilots. And I'm excited to be a part of it. I think we have a bunch of cool new concepts going out. You know, it's funny, my friend Nima moved from LA over to New York to kind of work with me on this. And he moved in January to New York. In February, Gary calls us and we get on this random call at 3:30 p.m. And it's with this man named Beeple. And Gary's like, and Beeple's like, hey, like the auction's in 2 days. What do you guys want to do? We thought we were just going to do like a little video interview on Zoom, or maybe, you know, I don't know what, we didn't know what could possibly happen.
It's just thrown into a meeting. Yeah.
Yep, just thrown into a meeting. And Gary looks at me and Nima on the camera. And he's like, guys, it's 3:30 right now. Check the last flight out of New York and get down to South Carolina immediately. And so I lived in Jersey at the time. I was in the Manhattan office. I didn't have any of my gear. I didn't have any clothes. And Gary's like, you left your camera in my apartment. You can use that. I have underwear and socks. Wear them. And then I just bought like a random hoodie in the airport, and we were on a flight at 6 o'clock in JFK, flying down to South Carolina, where the next morning at 8 a.m. we're in Beeple's house, documenting the journey of his entire NFT, project.
Wow.
Every day.
Wow. So that's incredible. I love some backstory of how those things kind of go down. So this hasn't even been released, right? This concept.
No, we had a final version last week, and now Gary is kind of like, I don't know if I want to just hit publish on this. So we're seeing what the opportunities are out there.
Yeah. So let's talk about it for a second. Let's talk about the whole Beeple thing, because it ties into NFTs, obviously. But for anybody listening that doesn't know, Beeple is an artist, a digital artist, and I think he did like one piece a day on his Instagram or something like that, right? For like a year.
He did this isn't perfect for your podcast.
Okay.
What you just said is perfect setup, because we are talking about dreams, and we're talking about the thing that you want to do and how do you get there and what's the process of, right?
That's exactly
and
what
so many people will read the headline, hey, Beeple sold his piece of art for 69 million. People will assume, okay, yeah, he's been putting images on Instagram for a year. He was putting out an image every day for the last 15 years of his life.
15 years of his life. Wow.
15 years of his life.
So much bigger than a year.
So much bigger. So, well, what's so important about that is, whether it be Beeple, Mike Winkleman, or whether it be Gary Vee, Gary put out a show for 5 days a week for 4 years straight called Wine Library TV. before I or anybody else really ever heard of him. It was a very small niche. He put out an episode a day, 29 minutes long, on YouTube about wine.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever people come to me and like, hey, I want to do this thing, it's always fun to ask how long have you been doing it? Oh,
Yeah.
6 months, 8 months, a year. I'm like, cool, 4 more years
Yeah.
every day.
Yep.
Because it takes time. It takes time to build the process. If you go look at people's first drawings, they're like sketches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
he evolved and and then he evolved into the artist he is today. And the same as Gary. If you watch Gary's first Wine Library TV episode in 2006, I think, yeah, in 2006, uh, you'll see his face,
15 years ago.
his character, like his body is everything's different. He's a different dude,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's important to watch. I think why I'm loving documentaries more and more now, and the next 10 years are going to be remarkable, is before documentaries were told through old press clippings, footage that might have been found somewhere through a home video camera, and
Right.
interviews with friends and family.
Right.
Documentaries that are going to come out over the next 10 years are going to have so much documented history of photos on Facebook, Instagram, all the little videos that you have on your phone. The
Mm-hmm.
artists themselves are documenting themselves, and they're like realizing, oh my God, I could become this. And it
Yeah.
would be cool to watch that process. Like, I love the video of Beyonce dancing at 14 years old. I think that's remarkable. But we
Right.
have so much more of that now, you know?
Yeah, especially today, right? Like, and it's cool because you never really know when it's going to be relevant. Like, I've been watching a lot of documentaries lately that have been coming out on HBO and stuff, and they're about stuff that's like 20, 30 years old, stories
Mhm.
that just kind of need to be told that people don't know about. And like you said, they're working with not all of the rich media that we're going to have today. So I completely agree with you there, man. So 15 years. So Beeple, what you documented, right, was him turning the last year of those daily artworks into NFTs, right, and then auctioning them off
Well, no.
loosely, or what? Give me the
No, so
full. I don't
so
want
what,
to misspeak.
yeah, what ended up happening was Christie's auction house, which is a traditional art auction house where they do like the gavel and with the numbers and all that.
Mm-hmm.
They welcomed Beeple into the being the first digital artist into an auction that they've ever
Okay.
had. So it was a
Okay.
big moment for the transition of the digital art community and the traditional art world. There was a lot
Got
of
it. So it was a traditional auction, but for the first
traditional
time with
art
digital
auction.
art and NFTs. Okay.
Right. And what he did was he took all 15 years and put them into a collage, and it called the Everydays. And that's what he was, that was the final piece of
Wow.
the art.
Okay.
It was quite remarkable. And yeah, so that's kind of like actually what the art was. But
Is there
but
individual ones too? Am I
yeah, so
tripping?
what he's
Okay.
allowed to do is, because that became his own separate piece of art, the whole collage, he can
Yeah.
now also auction off each individual one.
Ah, so that's what he's doing now.
And then he's doing that, and
Okay.
then people are buying them, and this guy Metacovan is like fractionalizing them. So there's like all these things that are happening around him at the same
Yeah.
time as this whole 5,000
Yeah.
15, yeah, 5,000 days or whatever.
Incredible.
Everything.
Incredible. And so you've got the behind the scenes of all that going down, before 15 years of
Yep.
artwork, I imagine, pretty much unmonetized, and
Yeah.
then turning that 15 years into 60 million.
Yeah.
69 million? How much was it? 60 million?
69 million.
69
Uh,
million dollars.
Beeple had said that he had never made more than $100 on his artwork before October of 2020.
Wow.
And that's because, he never thought about selling it. Honestly, he was doing the art, and then he did a lot of concerts for Bieber,
Or commission stuff, I imagine.
yeah, like just
Yeah.
a digital artist but yeah, for his actual artwork, he had never made more than $100.
Think about that.
Crazy.
Really sit and think about that if you're listening to this, because this is something this man poured his heart into. Like, art is something that comes from the heart. You know, he did that every day for 15 years, not getting paid for it. Cash that in for 69 mil. You know, your passion is worth something. You just got to do something with it.
Ooh, I like that.
All right. So 137. So a bunch of new pilots.
Yep.
You know,
I
this
just want
is
to
this
run.
gonna be, you know, like I love it, man. So it sounds like you get to pick and choose and work on all kinds of different stuff. Cause Vice, like if I think about like a Vice, like they do all kinds of different things. It's really just interesting stories, you know, that kind of speak to a certain audience and generation. So I wish you the most success on that, man. I think that's
Thank
gonna
you,
be
brother.
incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited, honestly. Like, you know, it's hard to like not meet every day with Gary because I love that dude and I love what we do. I love our thing. Um, but also I feel like there's a lot of new things on the horizon, you know, and I'm excited. I do love stories and I love telling stories. And if there's any way I can do that every day, aka I am, then I'm
Yeah.
happy, you know,
You're
and
living the dream, man.
live
You're
my
living the
dream.
dream. That's why you're on the podcast. Have you thought about that? Have you had time during COVID to sit and think about that you're living out your dreams?
I have. I honestly have. Because again, perspective, every day I'm just in my head talking all the
Mhm.
time. And so every day I'm like, yo, bro, what the like you are doing it. And it's not like, oh, just a pat on the back. It's more motivation for me to do more, right? Like
Yeah,
even
yeah.
even I would say uh, last June, I really took after the all-in challenge. I kind of took like 2 to 3 weeks where I didn't really work as hard because I was like
Hmm.
tired, exhausted, just going through a pandemic kind of guy, like all of us.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I just kind of took that time to like really like meditate and think and clear my head and try to figure out what the fuck I want to do. And so I kind of I really gained a lot of perspective and you know, I every day I tell myself I'm so grateful. Every day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm sure, you know, you were doing that way before your life transformed into the life of your dreams. So, um,
I think so.
at least that's how it's been for me anyway.
Yeah.
Gratitude started first. DRock, this has been incredible, man. I got one final question for you. Is
Love it.
there something maybe we haven't touched on when it comes to mindset, approach, even a morning routine? What is something you'd like to share with everyone that's listening to this that's really they're out there pursuing their dreams, man? They might just be just getting started. They might be in a little bit of a slump, or they might be riding high right now. I'm not sure, but they're all on that path of trying to create the life they want. You know, what's something you'd like to share with them?
Hmm. I have a few things. So I'm gonna write
Cool.
it
I
down.
love it. Let's share
Number
a few things.
yeah, number one, this one's from Gary. This is the one piece of advice that I'll never leave it behind because it's just don't judge yourself.
Mm.
You know, we're talking about mental health, we're talking about trying to achieve things, we're trying to talk about like all the dreams that we have. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
very easy to get caught up in your own mind and tell yourself you're not doing enough. You know, you're looking on Instagram every day, you're like, Charlie's running around the world, you know, changing lives. How
Mm-hmm.
do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Or you're like watching Gary Vee and he's like talking to the baby. You're like, I want to talk to the baby. And it's like you get caught up in all these
Yeah,
superficial things that don't actually mean anything for your life. So,
that's
you
huge.
know, a lot of people think that other people are judging them, but a lot of times it's you judging yourself. And so if you can
Mm-hmm.
unwind that a little bit and work on it, it's another thing. Like I try to go basic. It's literally going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
The days that you slip off and you don't feel those biceps anymore, you gotta go back and you gotta pick up a 10-pound weight again, not the 30 pounds that you were doing before, you know?
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's very basic life. So I think a lot about that. Number two, practical advice, something I want to write a book about one day. Work for free. I think a lot of
Mm.
people get wrapped up in how much time, how much their time is worth.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, they want something. They want
What
more
they,
access. They want more dreams. They need more things.
this is
So
huge.
in order to get those things, you must offer your time, because that is actually what you have. Tying it
Mm-hmm.
back into the Gary NFT project too. Time is the most valuable asset that we ever have.
Mm-hmm.
I hate getting older, but I love growing up.
I like that
I
too.
hate getting old. I hate it. But I
Yeah.
love the wisdom and age that, like, even today, this morning, I'm like cleaning my apartment a little bit. I'm like, wow, I'm like really getting like proper. Like
Yeah.
I know what I want. I know what makes me happy.
Yeah.
I'm really developing like my taste and my style, my swag. So that's cool. But yeah, work for free. If you
I
want something,
love that.
you need to
I
offer
love
it.
that. There's a saying that kind of ties in what you were just talking about, that youth is wasted on the young, and that's a time thing, because I
1,000%.
remember I was so ambitious when I was like 18, 19, and I just didn't think I had time. Like right now, I if I could have the awareness of the amount of time I did actually have when I thought I had no time at 18, 19, 20, which is probably what all these people listening are going through themselves,
All of us.
is slow down. Like you've got so much time. The only one like rushing yourself is you. It's like one foot in front of the other and you'll get where you're going. Like that's just logic, right? But
Yeah.
man, that's huge. And it's like you said, it's something to keep picking back up. It's not like you just apply this once. Stop judging yourself. I'm hard on myself all the time. Got to remind myself of that. But that's what that's something I've done. Just to kind of add on to that point, I'm gonna let you get to number three. But to add on to that point is like build in little triggers. So when you do catch yourself, like, okay, I'm judging myself. I
Mhm.
know I'm talking negatively to myself. I know I'm being hard on myself. I just need to reset and give myself a break, because let's be honest, like, realities, you probably have been working very hard. It's just that work isn't recognized yet. And that's okay
100%.
too. So,
Number
all right.
three, checklist. For me, I'm a big checklist guy, but you gotta not have 10 of them. You gotta have one
Yeah.
checklist. You gotta put all of it into one place. And then that's what I've done is I made things very actionable. Put them into your Google Calendar. Put them
Mm,
into a place where there's a time that you have to look at that thing and be like, I need to address these 5 things. Now, I know human life, don't judge yourself. If your day is actually busy, just move it to another day. Don't delete it.
mm-hmm.
You'll get there. You just gotta like keep putting it on your plate so that way you can clear it.
Yep.
And then um put more stuff out into the world. Like I use my Instagram as my diary because I would love to have watched the process of Steven Spielberg from when he was 23 years old into the man he is today and what he's done. And I wish there was somewhere I could go back and read him posting stuff about his journey, what his mindset went through when he broke his collarbone, like I did, if he ever did. You know what I mean? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
wish I
Mm-hmm.
knew more about him. And it's such a cool tool to communicate with other people. Put
Yeah.
stuff out and interact with other people is just the number one thing I love doing, you know?
Mm-hmm. I
Uh,
love that. I love that. Yeah, I mean, our whole platform is really centered around, like, start talking about your dream and start building an engaged community around that, and
mhm.
because I think that's a game changer. So,
100.
DRock, this has been incredible. I think after you have some hit shows with 1:37 p.m., we're gonna have you back on.
I'll be
Definitely
here.
looking forward to meeting you in person one day.
Likewise.
And man, just tell the people where they can find you online. I'll drop the links in the description below. And but man, really, thank you, bro. I think you added so much value for our audience today, and I can't thank you enough.
I'm humbled and thank you for your time, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh, Links are in the description, so.
All right, brother.